Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from SimpleProgrammer.com. And today I'm going to give you my list of all the books that I read this year. And I believe it was 62 books this year, which is not as much as last year. If you want to check out last year's video, you can check it out here. For 2016, I believe it was over 70 books. This year, 62. So, I'm slacking a little bit here. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of each one of these books. And there'll also be a blog post that will come out that will list all the books as I do every single year. I've been reading probably over 50 books a year for the last, I think, 4 years. And so you might be wondering how I do it. I will tell you that at the end of the video, so you might want to stick around to hear that. And I'll give you some tips also on how to read so much and how to retain information from the books. But also, if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of the reviews I do, if you're a big book junkie like me, click the subscribe button below, click the bell so you don't miss any videos. And some of the books, honestly, I may have nothing to say about them because I may have forgotten them. So if it's a book that's that forgettable, then, that says something about the book. Well, not always, but sometimes it's just because I'm dumb. So, all right, let's go through this. This is probably in reverse order, with Audible being the most likely, being book, or Audible books mostly being first, since that I've had to go through my Audible history to figure out which books I read or listened to. Some people make sure that they tell me every time I do a review. So here we go. All right, so first one is Principles. This was by Ray Dalio. I just finished this book, actually. I haven't actually done a real review on the channel. I'll have to do that. But this one was tough because I really wanted to like this book. And Ray Dalio, Bridgewater, super successful company. He's been super successful. And I agree with most of his principles, but I just didn't like the book, and I didn't like the way that the principles were applied to business, simply because I felt it was just too structural and too rigid. I could not work in that environment, and I felt like Ray is a genius, but he tried to take his genius and he tried to put it on autopilot to make other people operate the way that he does, which just, in my opinion, doesn't work. And so far, we'll see what happens, but to give you a little bit of context on this book, from my understanding, he hasn't really left the helm of the company yet and had it be successful. So we'll see what happens. But regardless, I'm a big principle person. I definitely respect Ray, even though I might not like the book so much. It's still a good book. Still, some principles to consider. It's definitely some things that I would pull out of it. But in general, I expect this book to resonate with me more because I'm such a principled person. I believe so much in using principles to do things, right? So, for example, a principle that we have at Simple Programmer that I've really tried to do is that I'll take 50% less revenue for 100% more automation. So if something is automated, it's better than having to manually do it, and even if you make less money, right? So that's one principle. But anyway, a pretty good book. Like I said, I'm going to go through and look at the actual document he has online with the principles, and I'll probably get more out of that now that I've listened to the book. But not my favorite. I was expecting much, much more, and I wanted to like the book, and I feel like there's something wrong with me that I don't. But hey, that's it. So there you go. All right, next one, The Graveyard Book. I'm not going to remember all the authors on this. I'll try. It's Neil Gaiman, I think. This was highly recommended. It's a really good book according to everyone, but I just didn't find it that interesting. I listened through it. It's a fiction book. Actually, I don't listen to very many fiction books. Maybe that's why. The story was good. It was interesting, but it didn't feel great to me. I just didn't relate to it as much, so maybe I'm just a cold-hearted asshole. I don't know. So, next was Win Bigly. This is by Scott Adams, who is the creator of Dilbert. This book was all about the election, about Trump, really. And Scott, went through and basically, he was predicting Trump win from the beginning, just like I was. Like, I have Untitled Programmer episodes, like before Trump even announced his candidacy or announced that he was going to run at all, that I was saying that he was going to win. He was going to win the primaries, and he was going to win the election. So, it doesn't matter if you're a Trump supporter or not, he's got some good information here. The way that he sort of couches the book is that the book is more about persuasion. And it is persuasion. It's really about how Trump used persuasion. But it's a really, really good, you should read this book just to understand the power of persuasion and influence. If you're a fan of Robert Cialdini's book, Influence. By the way, there'll be links to all these books, and they should be showing up here. I keep forgetting. I haven't been pointing in the air. So hopefully the previous books have shown up as well. But But Influence is a really good book as well. But this is definitely one of those books if you're interested in persuasion and to see, and if you're like, I don't understand how someone like Trump wins the election, you're probably going to want to read this book, because honestly, he objectively tells you how that happened and how powerful influence is, right? There's a lot of times, and I'll tell you this from personal experience, when you believe something, and there's you heard of a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, that have reality distortion fields. It's when you believe something so much, it doesn't even matter what you're saying. People will get behind you and believe you as well. It's more important than facts. It's more important than almost any other factor, right? There's another good book that I'll get to in a little bit here called, what is it called? It's on this list, so I'll look for it. Anyway, we'll get to it. It's about building a cult, essentially. Oh, mass movement, right? So yeah. Okay. Let's move on, because this is going to take forever. All right, The Untethered Soul. Do not remember the author name. This is a really, really good book. I highly recommend this book. We'll put it up here. I want to say it's Michael something. I don't know. Okay, anyway, the book is really, really good. It's about this idea of like observing yourself. It's really one of those transcendental type of books about observing yourself, observing being the, who you are. Like, you are not your brain. You are not the thoughts that you're having. You are the observer, and getting into that mindset, and really how powerful that is, especially for emotional mastery, emotional control. I wish my phone would stop locking up on me. All right, so that one was really good. Untethered Soul, highly recommend that one. Michael Singer, that's the name. See, I remember some of these. So I could actually, that's just some proof that I actually gained or retained something from the book. But yeah, I thought this book was definitely, it's one of my top books. I think, it's up there with The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, if you want to say it. Okay. Backbone. So this is a book that is, I did a review on this. I did a review on all these books. So, but I can't remember the author for this one for sure. But it is a book about being a man. It's a man book, manly book, but it approaches it from an interesting angle. At first, I think when I read this book, I was like, oh, this is kind of soft, but it's really one of the big things, the biggest takeaway for me for this book was the idea that men need to have men friends and confide in them, and that's really important, like to hang out with other men. And obviously The Way of Man and The Way of Men and some of the other books have said that, but this one really hit home for me, and I started doing this more so after this book. So Backbone, highly recommend that book. For New Liberty, this was the book that finally got me to go full libertarian. I know some of you don't like that, but hey, read the book and let me know. I mean, because I still have some questions about it. Like I said, if you want to check out the review I did on it, that'll give you some more information. But it's really solid, like really solid principles. And the thing is, like, libertarian is not like Republican or Democrat. It's like a totally different philosophy. It's like beyond that. It's like it's more at the philosophical level than the party level. So it's really interesting. I think everyone should read that book so they understand the principles. It's very, very basic. It's a principle-based thing. And it explains it very well. There's a couple of gaps, like I said, I think that have to be figured out, but it really pushes this idea of going for principles or ideals, which is important, even though you may not ever achieve them. But when you back down on them, you end up losing. You end up losing your ground, and you end up not really making the progress that you want. So for A New Liberty, definitely go check that one out. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, I think this is by T. Harvey Eckert. Oh, and by the way, I believe For a New Liberty was Rothbard. Okay, so Secrets of Millionaire Mind, T. Harvey Eck, really good book. Definitely check that one out. It's all about the mindset. If you have problems, if you're struggling with limiting beliefs as far as money, like you think getting money or being rich is bad, this book will help you. It'll help you understand that a lot of it is in your mind, and what you internalize and what your views on money are is what's gonna influence your environment around you. So this reminds me a lot of that book by Waddles called The Secrets of Getting Rich, or I can't remember the name of it now, but it reminds me of that. It's really a mindset book, right? It's really a mindset book of telling you how to have the right mindset in life in order to achieve success. So even though it's kind of a weird name of a book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, it's about that millionaire mindset. And there's a really good quote from this book. I believe that this is where I got the quote, which is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I live by that because it's so important. It's so true. All right. Next one up is Captivate. This was interesting. I wanted this book to be really good. I was actually like a little bit thrown off by the cover of the book because it's the author, or I think it's the author, and she's all looking good and like, it's basically pretty good marketing for it. But the problem I had with this book, ultimately, this book is all about sort of like influence and becoming like a social person, like to build your network and that kind of thing. You could think of it as a networking book, right? Maybe a charisma book, but it's very tactical, and so it's not principle based. It's more tactical based. It's like studies, and you can do this like when you're walking around a room, or facial tells and all this stuff, and that's good. But I'd rather teach people principles, and I talked about that in the review of the book, so I won't rehash that too much. But I think it's a decent book, but I'd rather someone learn the principles behind what they're doing, and then they can come up with their own methods for doing it. This could help you though if you're starting out, if you have real bad social anxiety and whatnot, and you just don't know how to network at all, then you could apply these tactics, and then later you could learn the principles. Okay, Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior, and I can't remember the author of that one. Okay, Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. This book was not quite as good. This book takes place in like Hawaii. There's some cool stuff in here. Like, I think the biggest thing I got from it was this concept of that, everything that we're doing in life, all the stuff that we're accumulating and stuff, and the achievements that we're making, right? Whether it be building our physiques or making money or all these things, and all of that is just the boat that takes you to the other side. And once you get to the other side, you don't need the boat. And I was thinking that's such a cool concept. It's like, if you think about everything that you're doing in life, right? All the things you're trying to achieve, the goal, and you realize that those are not the important things, but what's important is that it's a vehicle. It's your personal growth. That's what's important. And so all those challenges, all the things you're facing, all the obstacles that you face on the way to where you're going, those are the things that are important. That was a big concept that I got from the book. And like I said, I felt like it was trying to be the other book. The first book was really good. I want to watch the movie of the first book. I keep forgetting to do that, but it'll probably disappoint me. All right. Next is The Goal. So this is a book about Kanban, essentially. It's about lean. It's a story told. It's told in a story format, which was really interesting. The story was actually interesting and engaging, and I learned a lot about this, about lean manufacturing. I'm not sure how applicable this will be to my life now. In software development, it might be more helpful. Because I did lean in Kanban there, but now with my current business, I don't know. But it was fun, it was entertaining, and I did learn a lot about like just the thinking process there. I definitely recommend it for anyone that is doing any kind of lean or doing stuff with work in process, and especially if it also made me wonder too how much like a lot of people that were applying lean to software development. I don't know. I actually am more against that now after reading this, because I'm like, well, some of this stuff, it just doesn't apply in a digital world. I mean, to some does, but a lot of it doesn't. Let's see. Then we have The Story of Philosophy. This thing keeps on messing up. The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant. I thought this was great. I'm a big philosophy person, obviously. I mean, this channel is basically philosophy. But he skipped a few great philosophers. He skipped the whole Stoic thing and basically dismissed it. Aside from that, though, if you are interested in philosophy, this is a good like history of philosophy and walks you through it for everything from Aristotle and Plato all the way up to modern day philosophers or close to modern day like Bertrand Russell. And what I really found interesting was this was my introduction, really my introduction to Spinoza, who me and Spinoza, we're like, we feel each other, all right. So I like Spinoza, and and try to think of some other philosophers. But he goes through a lot of different philosophers and how different philosophies evolved over time. John Locke, you've got what's his name, the On Liberty guy, John Stuart Mill. So it's a really in-depth study of philosophy. I like it. It was a good book. I'd recommend it. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. This one I got like on a Kindle deal, but I'm always interested in being a minimalist and stuff. I thought it was a really good book. It was really interesting, just the way that, you know, the author, she lives her whole life around this concept. She's a Japanese author, and it is a very kind of strange book, but it makes you feel at peace. And there were some good tips in there that I haven't applied yet about tidying up. Seems like a weird, sometimes I read a off-topic kind of weird book, and that was one of them. Okay, but it was good. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Man, this was a really good book. I highly, highly recommend this book. This will go on one of my top book lists because it was so good. Dr. Joe Spinoza, I think. Is that, wow, that's coincidental. Is that true? I think I think that might be the author's name. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't write these down. I just wrote the book names so that I'd have to challenge myself to see if I know the author. But it was really good. It's all about, gosh, it's about the mindset. It's about how, honestly, what you believe influences your reality. And it goes really into depth. It goes into the quantum physics of it and the neurochemistry of it. I mean, some people might think it's a little bit woo-woo out there, but I really found it to be valuable, and I feel like this is one of those life-changing books. Like, once you understand this, and you understand how that what you think about ultimately manifests in reality. I know this, again, some of you are like, but give it a chance. Honestly, if you've been skeptical of that kind of thinking, this is probably the book for you, okay? Let's see. I'm going to have to speed this up a little bit. All right, I Can See Clearly Now. This is by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I heard on a podcast. And after that, I was like, wow, I really like this guy. In fact, I think I heard it on James Altucher's podcast, or I heard him. And I've read a couple of his books now. I want to read more of his books. He just has this right way of thinking. Now, I Can See Clearly Now is about his life story and it's kind of the lessons they learned in his life. So it wasn't quite as exciting. It wasn't, to me, there was definitely some pieces in there, gems. I mean, he's a good writer. He's got a good story. Some of his other books are better, I think. This one was his last book before he died, honestly. Or, you know, no, I guess not coincidentally. But it was his last book before he died. And he's a really good guy. Really figured out a lot of stuff. Very similar, like, mindset and way of thinking as me, which I liked. You know, I immediately connected with his thoughts about life. His life philosophy and mine. He's got this kind of philosophy of, like, you know, live your life and just accept the consequences, and don't let fucking people put pressure on you or expectations on you, and don't put them on other people, right? To kind of freedom is probably one of his highest priorities in life, which it is mine. Okay, so next, Perenial Seller. This is by Ryan Holiday. Ryan is a friend of mine. I consider him to be a friend. He is he's an awesome writer. One of my favorite books of all time is, which I have a signed copy of, The Obstacle is the Way, right? And that was my first Ryan Holiday book. I haven't liked every single book that he's written since then, but this one I did for sure. This is the way, like, if you're going to build something, you know, creatively, if you're going to write a book, if you're going to do something, this is the way to do it, is to make it a perennial seller. Like, if you look at my books, The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide, Soft Skills, they're designed to be perennial sellers. If you look at a lot of the videos I produce and a lot of the content I produce, it's designed to be perennial, meaning that you could also say evergreen, that it's constantly going to be useful, as opposed to, I try to not create stuff like tutorials on the latest version of a JavaScript framework, because that's not perennial. It's going to go out of fashion. It's going to go out of date pretty quickly. So that's this book is all about, like, that strategy in life, and which is really important. If you apply the strategy in life, it will set you up really well. So check that book out. How Not to Die. I had mixed thoughts on this book. It has a lot of really good health advice. It's very much pushing veganism, and I think it's very biased in that. No, I don't have anything against veganism per se, but I do have something against sort of pushing it in a way that's lying to people. And that's what this book does, unfortunately. It is on some of the studies, it is partial, and it hides information. You know, unfortunately, it's pushing an agenda. But regardless of that, I'm still going to recommend the book because it's such a good book. Because I'm objectively telling you, it has some really, really good health information in there, and it got me eating more greens. So, you know, I'm pretty close to being a vegetarian, except for the fact that I eat meat. So if it weren't for that, I would be. But no, but honestly, like I do eat so much salads and vegetables, and this is really, really good. So this book will tell you why. Again, I think there's a little bias on the meating side of it, but if you eat grass-fed meat, beef, and you if you select the right meats that are anyway, let's not get into the debate. Listen, because I know some people are like already going to get into the debate with me. That's good. I'm glad that you have fire in your heart, but let's save that for something else. I don't need to argue with that. I don't have any problem with someone being vegan. I don't have any problem with someone not being vegan. I do have problem with misrepresentation of facts. Unfortunately, like I said, this book misrepresents some facts. It's okay though, because it also has some really good information and good facts, so that it's worth reading. And so for me to say that and still tell you it's worth reading tells you that the book is good, right? But be careful. Anytime you read something, by the way, be careful. Don't just assume. Don't just like take what the author says. Authors, just because they're an author doesn't mean they're the authority. It means they're an authority, or maybe, right? They're at least they're presenting something as an authority. So don't get taken in by that. Again, something that you would find in Robert Cialdini's awesome book Influence, where he talks about this concept. Okay, next. Pimpsler, Italian, levels 1 through 5. I did the Pimpsler method, and I went through the audio program. This is why I read less books this year, because I spent 30 minutes a day, actually it ended up being an hour a day, going through Pimpsler lessons for like 6 months. And I learned Italian. I mean, well, I didn't quite learn Italian, but enough that when I went to Italy, I was able to speak and converse with people. I would still, it's not enough to really like learn the language in depth, unfortunately, but I recommend it. I would say that it's a good program, the Pimpsler, in general. So I don't know. If I were to do it over again, like to try and learn Italian better, I'd probably just do like a very immersive program. But this was worth it for an hour a day to be able to go to Italy and to actually be able to speak some Italian. It was kind of fun to go, so I listened to the audio versions of this, obviously. So, all right. And I include this because I bought it on Audible. All right, Peak Performance. Gosh, this is one of those this is one of those books. So there's a book called Peak, which I'm going to get to. And this one is also Peak, but this one's Peak Performance. I just felt like this book was not very good. I felt like it was just like one of those capitalized on the word peak and capitalized on some stuff, like rehashing a lot of the stuff you've read in so many books about improving your performance. I don't even remember anything really that stuck out to me about this book. I hate to like say negative things about books because I know authors spend a lot of time writing books and I know how hard it is, but I really just don't even have much to say. I would pass on that one. Okay. How to Get and Stay Motivated by Grant Cardone. I love Grant Cardone, but obviously this book, I mean, it was in like an audio track on Audible, but obviously he had a VA or someone, take a bunch of quotes that he said from different speeches or different things and bring them all together that had something to do with motivation. A lot of them were actually repeated in there, but overall it was good. I mean, but I don't know. I would probably skip it. Like, don't let this be your impression of Grant Cardone. All right. The Obesity Code. This was a really good book. This is by Dr. Jason Fung, I believe. See, I'm getting pretty good on the author name count. Really, really changed my mindset about fasting. I mean, I've been a faster. I eat one meal a day. I've been fasting, basically 22 hours a day for the last 3 years, mostly, right? And I do a couple of day fasts. But this made me understand insulin and insulin sensitivity a little bit better. Now, I have to admit that some of the things I've been trying haven't been working so far as improving insulin sensitivity, but I've got it definitely has given me a lot of ideas and a lot of it changed the way that I do a lot of my diet, and I have seen some improvement with that. I mean, my physique has been better because of this book, I could say for sure. And it's really interesting book. I think everyone should read this book about your health. It's sort of a different approach than the How Not to Die. So these are kind of, I did a book review where I compared the two and I said that they're kind of conflicting ideas, but you should read both of them and get the best out of both, right? Who knows, there's a lot of things in life that you need to see both sides of it. And then figure out which things make sense for you, right? And because if you don't see both sides, you often get a very distorted view of one side of things. Okay, so The Will to Power, the Philosophy of Friederich Nietzsche. This is one of those great courses that I got on Audible. I thought it was good, a good overview of Friederich Nietzsche and his Nietzsche, whatever, and his philosophy and the books that he wrote. I like to sometimes, if I don't have enough time to like dive into every single thing, like I did this with the Transcendentalist movement, Transcendentalism, and I took a great course on that. This is a good way to like really understand and get an overview of stuff, and then you can zoom into the stuff that you're interested in. So when I read, which I'll tell you the next book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which we'll talk about in a second. When I read that, I wanted to know more about Friederich Nietzsche, and I still want to know more about him, so I'm probably going to read some more of his writings as well. He's definitely a philosopher that I connect with. Spinoza and Nietzsche, me and if I could meet two philosophers, that would probably be it. I'd like to have lunch with both of them. So that's just to tell you, what my thoughts are. I think that is a great course. I would recommend it. Okay. Thus Spoke Zarathustra. A lot of people had recommended that I read this, and this is a really interesting book. It's like written all in a parable format, reminds me of kind of the Bible, and it was really powerful. There's so many powerful quotes in here, so many powerful ideas. It outlines Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy to a great detail, but it's really confusing. I think that like this is a book worth studying multiple times just because of what is the real message here in a lot of cases here. A lot of people come away with different interpretations of it, but I definitely think it's a good read. I would highly recommend it. It really opened up my eyes to who Friedrich Nietzsche is. Like, besides, everyone says, oh, he's this whole nihilist and all these things, because he's famous for saying God is dead. People misunderstand that. They don't understand what that really means. If you read this book, you're more likely to understand that. Not that you necessarily will. And some of the things that, he's one person who's not afraid to contradict himself in some way. Ralph Waldo Emerson is similar in that respect. In fact, Ralph Waldo Emerson has a famous quote. I can't remember the exact thing, the exact quote, but it's basically, I contradict myself, whatever. So what? I have a big mind. It's something to the effect of that. So I believe that strongly. I contradict myself. All right. Resilience. This was a really, really good book about being hardcore, right? You like the bulldog mindset? Check out Resilience. A really good book about a Navy SEAL. I think it was a Navy SEAL writing to another one of his brothers that is struggling in life and can't get his shit together, and he's telling him everything that he needs to do and like how life is supposed to be hard and don't expect it to be easy, and and how to overcome his challenges. Definitely something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, they think life is going to be easy, and so Resilience is a good book because it'll help you build resilience. This is probably one of the best attributes that you can build in life, is to be resilient. Like, that means that whatever someone throws at you, you can fucking handle. Okay. Next, I should have done this as a live stream, honestly. This would have been probably a good live stream. The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. So this was a really good book. This is kind of a foundational book on self-esteem. And I'll tell you why this is important, even if you think you have self-esteem. How you view yourself is going to determine how you act. You cannot change your actions. Your actions and your behaviors will always be in concordance with how you view yourself. This book is about building your true self-esteem, which is essential, especially if you want to live free, right? I talk about this all the time, is that you need to really not give a fuck what other people think. And in order to do that, you have to have true inner belief in yourself. And that's what the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem is. Self-esteem is really how you value yourself, okay? Self-confidence is a belief in your ability to do things, but self-esteem is more important, honestly, because if you have self-esteem, if you believe that you're a highly valuable person, that's going to come across in all of your interactions with people and how you look at your life and how you do things, okay? Primal Endurance. This was a book that was recommended to me about running. It's essentially a book about running on low carbs or almost no carbs, like kind of ketogenically. A really good book. I'm trying to remember the author now. It's the Daily Apple guy. I'm pretty sure Mark's Daily Apple, and I'm spacing his name right now. But he's a really smart guy. I read a lot of his stuff. I thought it was a really good book. I tried to apply what was in the book to my long distance running. I've obviously been running, I ran like 9 half marathons, ran one full, and I was doing the heart rate training, and it didn't seem to work for me. I don't know. So I have mixed thoughts on this. Now I'm training speed, and that is working. So, but maybe I built a base up. theoretically, all of the stuff in this book sounds really good and it's interesting, but I'm not sure if it's, I don't know. I have mixed thoughts. I think this could work if you apply it correctly, but I'm not 100% convinced that this is the best way to train, but it's worth a read for sure if you're a runner. Algorithms to Live By. Man, I love this book. This was such an interesting book. It's about AI and sort of like algorithms and how you can use them in real life. It starts out with like the optimum algorithm to find a mate, right? And also the same algorithm to find the best apartment in a city. And like, the cool thing about this book is it just gets you thinking about how there are algorithms that you can use in your life, and you can use some of this computer programming or software development knowledge and AI knowledge to actually make better choices in life. And so, it just got me thinking about when I'm making choices, is there an algorithmic proven way that I can use to do this? And so, yeah, just interesting. A lot of interesting stories, really well-written book with a lot of really good examples. So this was a fiction book. It was the Magic 2.0 series, which I've done some reviews on. This is the 4th installment of this Magic 2.0 series. The Magic 2.0 series itself, books 1, 2, and 3, were great. I mean, 1 and 2 were better. 3 started to get too politically correct. But number 4, this one was not very good. It was crap. Like, I don't understand what happened here. It was like just the story. Like, I don't read very many fiction books. I was really looking forward to this book, and I really recommend 1 through 3. But man, this one just, it didn't have a very good story, and it just tried to go too politically correct, and it was just, it lost what was beautiful about the first 3 books. So I'm so sad. I wish that the book were better. I hope that book 5 comes out and it's really, really good. There was actually, and I confirmed this when I looked at the Amazon reviews. I was like, everyone's saying the same thing as I'm saying, so it's not just me being an ass. Okay. The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. I reread this book. I actually listened to the audio version. The first time I read the book, I read the print version. Listened to the audio. Still an excellent book. Just still good. Like, you got to read The Power of Now. It's got a lot of strange stuff in it. Like I said, you might not agree with all of this stuff, but man, it is one of those foundational books that can really change your mindset, and it's really powerful, right? I think that it's a must-read book in my mind for everyone to really get in the moment, to realize how important it is to live in the present, not the past or the future. So I highly recommend it. The Everything Store. Man, this is a book all about Amazon and about Jeff Bezos' story, and he's an asshole, but he's an effective asshole, and he's a friggin' workaholic. He is a slave driver. He's ruthless. You will see it if you read this book. It's a really interesting story. I have mucho respect for Jeff Bezos, and I would now, a lot of people would read this book and say, I would never work for Amazon. I read this book and I was like, man, I wish I would have worked for Amazon at some point. I would love that environment, that fucking cutthroat environment where only the strong survive, and it's all about the bottom line and doing doing what you need to do to get your job done. I kind of like that. I mean, a lot of people probably wouldn't like that, but if you're going to get a job at Amazon, you should probably read this book first so you understand what the environment is going to be like, because Jeff Bezos, man, talk about the bulldog mindset. He's got the fucking bulldog mindset for sure, right? It's definitely crazy. Like, and just to hear their story and what happened, like, it's inspiring. I think every entrepreneur should read this book. Okay, Peak: The Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. So this is the good Peak book that I told you about. This is actually the book that, when Malcolm Gladwell says the 10,000 hours rule, he got it from the guy that wrote this book that actually did the study. And in this book, this guy knocks Malcolm Gladwell and says, bullshit, I didn't say 10,000 hours. He just took this one line from my study and he basically misconstrued it. So I'm not the biggest Malcolm Gladwell Maxwell Gladwell fan. Malcolm Gladwell. Man, I don't know why I can say that. But I'm not the biggest fan of him. A lot of his books I didn't really like because I feel like it's a victim mindset. But I like it when I've heard him on podcasts. I probably get along with the dude. I just don't agree with his philosophies as he writes in his books, like David, or what is it? Beating Goliath, or being I can't remember, Anyway, he's got a lot of books that I don't agree with, but Peak basically is the opposite of that. So this book is really, really good. I highly, highly recommend this book. It'd be one of the ones that I'd put on one of my top book lists. The reason why is because it's all about the idea that success in life, like the true top performers, comes from the people who put in the work. That like your environment and your initial abilities don't matter worth the shit when you get to the higher level. Like if you put in, what really differentiates the best of the best is hard work, is putting the deliberate practice, the correct kind of practice, practicing correctly, and the amount of time that you put into it. And those are the things that matter more than anything else. So that's why it's sort of anti-Malcolm Gladwell, is because he's all about like, well, you got to be the right person at the right time and privilege this and bullshit, and sometimes you just can't get out of your situation. Bullshit. Peak, with scientific studies in this book, proves that that's bullshit. And that's what I like about this book, because that's the right mindset to have, is that you can overcome. You can, like, if you put in the work, if you work the right way, it doesn't matter what disadvantage you had, like you're going to overcome that, and at the top level, it won't even matter. And he has a lot of studies that back this up, from chess players to all kinds of things. One thing that's surprising is that chess players that have a higher IQ are less likely to be ranked as highly as grandmasters, and the reason why is because they didn't have to work as hard. They might have taken things for granted. So there's a lot of really good stuff in this book. I would highly recommend it. Like I said, I believe it's the right mindset to have. It's sort of what I call the anti-Malcolm Gladwell book. Nothing against him. He's an awesome guy. He's super successful. And like I said, when I hear him on the podcast and everything, I like him. But I just don't like his book. I just don't like his philosophy that's in his books. Okay. The Truth. This is by Neil Strauss. He is the author of The Game. Okay. And this was a really interesting book. Oh, man. You want to read a book that is going to like shake you up a little bit and kind of get to your heart and make you really think about life and how and nihilism. This is the book. He goes through and honestly explores like open relationships and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he does some crazy shit trying to figure out how he can live, and it starts with him like in a sexual rehabilitation rehab. I mean, this is some deep stuff, and it's honest. It's like very truthful, really like deep stuff. Like this will change your life. This book, you read this book and you're like, wow, these are things I didn't think about, and this is like where I don't know even how to describe it. You can read or watch my original review on it, but this is a deep book. I think that every guy at least should read this book and realize, like Neil has kind of done the things that you've thought about doing and play them out and see where they go. And when you see where they go, sometimes it's a scary place. So that's what I can say about that book. Okay. Models. This is by Mark Manson, also the author of How Not to Give a Fuck, right? Is that what it is? Oh no, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I've got a copy of it, a hard copy here. This is actually a really good book. I expected this to be crap. I expected this to be... I mean, Mark Manson is an awesome writer, but I expected him to, like, do some kind of, like, watered-down bullshit, kind of the whole, feminized man type of thing, but he didn't. He went with the manly man approach, with the approach that I take when I talk to you guys about being more of a man and attracting women, and which is that, like, it's important to be a quality person, like yourself, like to improve yourself, and to build true self-confidence, true self-esteem. And that's the main factor. Like all these other things will come out of that, rather than using tactics to try and pretend to be something that you're not. Actually become the greatness that you're capable of. And he talks about how to do that in a lot of areas of your life, and how to deal with women, right? And how to, to get over things like approach anxiety, and how to, so it's actually a really, really good book. I pretty much agreed with all of the advice in the book, and I wanted to knock it because I was ready to like attack the slightest thing that he said wrong, but I agreed with it. I was a convert after reading it. So definitely recommend it for you guys. Definitely. Okay, next, Total Recall. This is the biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wow, really cool. Arnold just impresses me so much. He was a millionaire before he got into the movie business. And like in this book, it fucking blew my mind when he had these contracts for Conan the Barbarian, and he was making millions of dollars, and he didn't consider it a success. Like his standard of success was so high. Being someone who just willed themselves into the movie industry from Austria and came to the United States and made his way. I mean, he is a self-built person. Like he has accomplished so many things in his life. If you think about it, it's amazing, his story. And I highly recommend that book. If you don't know a lot about Arnold Schwarzenegger, you'll learn a lot. Keys to Success. This is, I believe, Napoleon Hill. It was good. This is like a bunch of success keys that were laid out. It can't be that good because I'm not recalling anything that really sticks out to me. I mean, it's Napoleon Hill obviously wrote Think and Grow Rich, right, which was a really, really good book, a highly recommended book. But Keys to Success I didn't find quite as useful. I think there's a lot of wisdom in there, but maybe because I'm so familiar with the concepts already that I didn't find as much. So you might find some wisdom in it. I don't know. David Deda's Enlightenment, Marriage, and the Dark Side. I honestly can't remember much about this book. I really like David Deda, and I just didn't, I don't know, I can't even remember much about the book, to be honest with you. So that says a lot when you think about all the other books that I've given you so far and what I've had to say about them. This was like a short thing. I think it was just like an audio production, but I put it on here because I did go through that book. So What Doesn't Kill Us. Man, how could I not pick up a book called What Doesn't Kill Us? This is about a journalist who went through Wim Hof's the Iceman, his training of his cold endurance training, and, basically try to figure out is he bullshit or not, and it turned out that he's not bullshit. So really interesting story about going through crazy, crazy shit. If you are into, that whole bulldog mindset and just like pushing yourself to the limits like I am, you'll enjoy this book for sure. Your One Word. This was a really good book. Man, I just spaced his name now. He has a huge YouTube channel. I have to. Evan Carmichael. Evan Carmichael. I had him on the channel, interviewing him about this book. At first, I was unsure. The book is good, but I was like, I don't know. Can I condense my life into one word? And then it became very, very apparent that my one word is bulldog. So there we go, bulldog mindset. That's what we're going with. It's really interesting to to exercise that and to think about if you're going to convey one thing, what is that one attribute? And it's helped me actually with my business because now I know, with the focus of a simple programmer, that ultimately everything is focused on being a bulldog, right? And the bulldog mindset. So it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. Everyone should try and come up with their one word. Bird by Bird. This is a book about writing. I don't honestly remember. I honestly don't remember a huge amount about this book. I thought it was okay, and yeah, I wasn't too thrilled by this. This was a recommended book that I was a little bit skeptical of, and I don't know, it wasn't anything stellar. I think, a lot of people would probably disagree with me, but just not my cup of tea because I can't remember much about it. So start with Why. This is what's it? Simon. What is his name? Simon I can't remember his last name, but he's done a lot of really famous TED Talks, and this is definitely a good book. It's all about how the people, the brands that really attract the kind of cult followings, like Apple and whatnot, that it's about the why that's behind them, or Tom's shoes, is it, right? All these things that have the why behind them are really, really powerful. And so I think that's something that is missing from a lot of businesses. And so this idea of starting with the why, whenever you're doing something, starting with the why makes a lot. Simon Sinek, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So I wasn't as enamored with the book as some people. They're like, oh, Start with Why is such a great book, but it had some good concepts, right? It had some things to make me think about and to make me reconsider my business. Okay, next, Beyond, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. You can check that one out. I read Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, and I thought that was pretty good, a really good explanation of, especially for getting into diet and fitness and weightlifting. But I felt like Beyond, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, all the programs and that, and some of the things that were being said, that it just doesn't work. I've tried that kind of stuff, so I wasn't quite impressed with the book, and it didn't do well in an audio format. I listened to the audio format of it. Definitely would recommend, if you're going to buy it, buy a print version of the book. The author, I can't remember his name now. He's definitely well versed in fitness and diet, but not as much as, I don't know. I've been lifting for 20 years, And I have done what he's suggested, and it's not quite enough to get the results that he's saying that you'll get. I've never seen someone get those kind of results. Like, it takes much more extreme. I mean, to get even to the physique I'm at now, I know that over 20 years that I've learned, it takes a lot more effort and to be a lot more extreme than what most people think. So, all right. Next, the star principle. I think this is by Koch, was it Richard Koch? He's the guy that wrote the 80-20 rule, or the 80-20 book. So this is all about like finding businesses that are star businesses, or growing a star business, or getting a job at a star business, which a star business is like a business that is positioned to basically excel in the marketplace. Like, he identifies criteria. I think this is a really good concept to think about, because if you can identify star businesses and you know the attributes and you can create a star business, it's so much more beneficial. So I'd recommend the book. It's, there were definitely a few things that I kind of disagreed with as far as like some biases there, but in general, this idea of looking for a star business, the star principle, makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good principle. Tribe of Mentors. I'm actually just finishing this book. It's Tim Ferriss's new book. I'll be finished by the end of the year, so I'm including on this list. So far, good. I mean, it's a bunch of questions that Tim asked to a bunch of famous people. So there's some nuggets of wisdom in there, and there's also a lot of crap. So just because someone's successful and famous doesn't mean that they're wise or that they know what they're talking about. This is something to keep in mind. So there's a lot of really good stuff in there, though. You just got to pick it out, maybe with a highlighter. But it's worth it, definitely. It's a long book. I think maybe it could be condensed down to the stellar stuff. But he says at the beginning of the book that some people will connect with certain people and find certain pieces. So it might depend on where you are in your life, which people you connect with and which piece of wisdom that you pull out of it. There's definitely a lot in there. You just got to find it. The Daily Stoic. This is a book that I've been reading for a year. It's a daily devotional kind of book, or whatever, daily meditation book on Stoic philosophy by Ryan Holiday. I started at the beginning of this year, and I'm almost done. I'll be done at the end of the year because it's one a day. I think it's good just to, like, every day to open up the book and to look at a quote from Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or Epictetus, and Ryan has a bit of an explanation about it, so it makes you think about certain things. If you're big into Stoic philosophy, you'll like this book. It's a good gift, by the way, too, for someone who likes to follow the calendar year. Manliness. This book was like, I was like, what's the author's name? Harvey Mann something. It was a perfect author name. Man, this book is deep. It was written by a philosophy major, obviously, and it's hard to get through. I don't know if I'd recommend this book. It definitely has some really good information about feminism and what is manliness and how it's defined, and really the author defines it as aggression, or essentially like the refined version of it is asserting yourself, which is interesting. And he talks about how like manliness is basically being pushed out of society by the gender neutral society, and how that's not going to work. Like, you're never going to get rid of manliness, so you got to figure out how to deal with it. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And so I won't rehash everything. I did a review on this pretty recently, but I thought it was a good book, but man, it'll be hard to get through this book, so I won't recommend it unless you really are into this topic, and you just got to have the data on this, because yeah, it's a little bit tough. The Warrior Ethos by Steven Pressfield. Okay, Steven Pressfield is one of my favorite authors because he wrote two books that I really love, which The War of Art, which is one of my top books of all time. We can put that there. And what is it? The Gates of Fire, which is just one of the best fiction books I've ever read. It's about the Spartans, and The Warrior Ethos is sort of about this as well. But it wasn't quite, I don't know, it didn't quite do it for me. It wasn't quite as what I was hoping it would be. But it's still good. It's still a good inspiration. It's a real short book. If you're into the whole Spartan type of thing, you'll probably find some value in this, although it's not quite as intense as I was hoping it would be, to be honest. So it's a good book, but, like I said. Okay, Danger and Play. This is a book it's really a compilation of blog posts by Mike Cernovich. I like Mike Cernovich. I read a lot of his stuff. He's a man's man, okay? And he's figured out a lot of shit. He's a good entrepreneur. He gets a lot of the flack in the media now. He's actually been growing his business. So there's a lot of reasons to follow him. One, because he's a man's man. Two, because he is a good entrepreneur, and he doesn't take people's shit. Like, talk about not giving a fuck what other people think. He's kind of the epitome of that. Unfortunately, this book was not so, like, it was just kind of thrown together, unfortunately. I mean, it had a lot of good stuff in it. He has a lot of blog posts that are good, but it was really just putting blog posts together. Okay, and then the book that I was talking about, it wasn't called Mass Movement. It is called The True Believer. I think this is Eric Hoffman. Is that right? I don't know. But really good book, oh gosh, about like how did these mass movements start? Like, how did Nazis come to power? How did, people follow, like how cults happen and all this stuff? And it really goes into the real psychology behind it and how you could manufacture a mass movement, how to stop a mass movement, right? And what creates like this true believer mindset. And it's not what you think. Definitely worth checking out, okay? Your Erroneus zones. This is another one by Dr. Wayne Dyer. This is, I think, his first book. Really, really popular book. Really, really good book talking about this stuff. The Erroneus zones, not your erogenous zones. Your Erroneous zones, the places in your life where you mess up, where you need to focus and figure some shit out. Really good philosophy for life. A lot of good information there. I'm trying to think if there's some nugget that I could pull out, but I can't think of one now. Nutrient Timing. This was just a book about basically like taking some studies. It's some kind of an older book for weightlifting on maximizing muscle protein synthesis. And I sort of, I'm shifting back and forth, but I started taking whey and carbohydrates, maltodextrin and dextrose during my workouts after reading this book because of the compelling evidence in this book and sipping on it during that time. And it's sort of, I felt like it worked for muscle growth, but the jury's out. I feel like it may be more optimal for muscle growth, but as far as, I think the sugar amount is too high, what they recommend in this book for most people to actually become lean. So I think if your focus is just on growth, that this might make sense, but it seems like those numbers are a little bit high. So I don't know, it's so hard with this kind of stuff. Like, you got to test stuff on yourself and see. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Headstrong. This is by, what's his name? The biohacking guru. I can see his face, but the Bulletproof Coffee, Bulletproof CEO. You know who I'm talking about, Dave Asprey. Okay, man, I have to say, I do not agree with Dave Asprey or his philosophy. I mean, the guy is, yeah, I just don't agree with philosophy. I can't say anything, super, like, I feel like I'm all about, like, not using crutches in life and building your strength and your mental fortitude and building that bulldog mindset. And I feel like he's all about using the hacks to get ahead without building the strength and the foundation behind it. And I know that that's probably an unfair characterization of him because he's probably got a lot of depth of character and has gone through a lot of shit. But I just can't get behind using steroids and using Manafidil and using all this shit to enhance yourself without, like, putting in the work, right? I just can't get behind that shit. I'm not going to recommend that shit. So Headstrong, it has a lot of, like, science, but I feel like a lot of it's bullshit. It talks about the Bulletproof Coffee, and there's probably some good stuff in there, but I'm just not a big fan. I mean, I hate to say it because so many of you I know that are in my audience that you're big Dave Asprey fans, and it's fine, you can be that, but I would just caution you this, right? Before you read or follow any of his shit, try it on yourself and see if it works. And if it works, fine, that's great, but as far as like some of the stuff that he's got in this book, but I would also say don't try shit on yourself that is a crutch, right? So at the same time, like, don't go down his fucking road of like using Manafidil, like ADHD it's speed. It's fucking speed, okay? Don't take drugs like to get ahead. Don't go and inject yourself with testosterone and say it's hormone replacement therapy. Bullshit. You're just fucking cheating, okay? So you're cheating yourself. That's why I don't give a shit. Like, you're cheating yourself, and that's the thing that I don't like about it. It's like, is this idea. Again, I'm a biohacker for sure. I'm experimenting, testing stuff on myself all the time. But I want to do stuff that makes me stronger, not weaker. And so if I physically become stronger, but internally I become weaker, that's a bad thing. And so anytime you do something that you would consider a hack in life, consider whether it makes you stronger or weaker. And if it makes you weaker, don't do it. Or if it makes you dependent on something, don't do it because it's not worth it, okay? Stumbling on Happiness. This was a really good book about like what makes a person actually happy in life, and it's totally different than what you would think. It doesn't tell you how to be happy. It tells you more about like, you know, what your misconstrued views on happiness. It's more of a psychology, a pop sci book. I wasn't too excited about it. I think it's pretty good book, but not one that I'd highly recommend. You know, check it out if you are interested. Published. I think I put this book on here twice. Okay, so maybe I only read 61 books. Published. This book is about creating a book and getting it self-published. I read this book because I was launching this Complete Software Developer's Career Guide this year, which I did and was really successful. And I used some of what was in this book. I think this book is more of a basic level. If you've never published a book and you want to self-publish a book, I'd recommend that one. And then along with that is another book called Book Launch by the same author. I'm spacing his name right now. These are self-published books, by the way. A lot of good information about launching a book, launching a Kindle book, getting out there, being a writer, some encouragement for like anyone can write, and some really good success stories. So I'd highly recommend that. Okay, next we're almost at the end here. Unshakable by Tony Robbins. So remember the book, what's it, the money book that I think it's called Money, that Tony Robbins wrote is really fucking long. It's a really big book. I don't think I have it with me here. I've got one somewhere. But here's the thing. Unshakable is like the short version of it. It's like the condensed version of what he says. I pretty much agree with, like, if you're not going to go the entrepreneur road, if you're not going to do, you know, if you're going to do anything, like, here, read the Millionaire Fastlane instead, okay? Like, but if you read the Millionaire Fastlane and you're like, fuck, I'm not going to do that, then read Unshakable and do that. Because that's, at least you're not going to lose your ass. You see what I'm saying? Like, Unshakable is what MJ DeMarco and Millionaire Fastlane would call the slow lane. But if you're going to do the slow lane, do it the right way. And so Tony gives you good advice on that. So that's the best way I can reconcile those, right? It's like, you know, does Tony give bad advice in there? No, he gives the perfect advice for being a pussy financially. I don't know how else to put it. Like, to safely invest over the long haul. But that's not going to get you rich. It's not going to get you Tony rich. It's not going to get you a Lambo. It's not going to get you what you really want. I would rather see you bomb out and fail out and be an entrepreneur and push it hard than, you know. But if you are going to put your money in the market, then listen to Tony's advice. Don't do the 401k and all this bullshit. Like, it's honestly solid what he says based on that, right? And he uses information from Ray Dalio, and I mean he's done his homework on this book just like he did on money, you know, on the bigger book that he wrote. Okay, The Art of Worldly Wisdom by, I think this is Baltar. I can't remember the whole thing, but this was a really good book. I'm going to read this book again. It's just principles. It's just the kind of stuff that's like, just all these sayings and ideas, very interesting concepts, right, to ponder. Like, there were so many things I could do 1,000 YouTube videos from this book. That's how much wisdom is in the book. It honestly has worldly wisdom. I highly recommend it. King. This is, I finally got around to reading Elliot Hulse's book, King. Elliot Hulse was someone who inspired me for this channel. The book, I'm not as, like, it's very scattered. Honestly, it's a good book. It has a lot of good stuff. I was already familiar with a lot of the philosophy behind it, so maybe that's why I'm not as excited. But yeah, it's very scattered. It has a lot of fitness advice for training for athletic performance, which not everyone, or becoming an athletic trainer. But then it has like some spiritual and mind stuff, and masculinity, femininity stuff, and Jungian philosophy. So it's a mix of a lot of things. If you're like a big Elliot Hulse fan, like if you watch him on YouTube and you're thinking that book will be that, it's not. It's something different. So I don't know. I'm not as I can't really strongly recommend it, honestly. Like, I would probably skip it. As much as I'm a big Elliot Hulse fan and I consider him to be a friend of mine, I've interviewed him on this channel, right? I know, you know, I just have to say that it's not my favorite. So there you go. But you might have a different opinion. But, you know, if you're looking for my recommendation, there it is. Okay. Unscripted. This one is by MJ DeMarco as well. It's his newer book. It's not as good as The Millionaire Fastlane, in my opinion. for me. I mean, I think, like, here's the thing. It's got a lot more information, but the problem is that I think less people will get through the book and get to the core of it because it's a little bit more of a difficult read. It's a longer read. All the information I agree with, and it's valuable. But if I'm going to recommend someone a book like that, I'm going to give them Millionaire Fastlane still, because I feel like that's just going to get them there in that mindset faster. But after they read that, then read Unscripted and get the full framework. And it's more of the how to do what he talks about in Millionaire Fastlane and how to live your life that way. And if you really need to wake someone up, and into the lie that they're living, this scripted life, there's some powerful concepts. Me and MJ think very much alike. I've had him on this channel as well, but it's a good book. I highly recommend it, but if you had to choose between Unscripted and Millionaire Fastlane, I guess this is the best way I would say it, is choose the Millionaire Fastlane. Okay, let's see. We'll go through Gnosis, a Renaissance in Christian Thought. This was a random book that I picked up at like a dollar bin or something, just because I was interested in Gnosis. It was very, very it's academic level theology. So it's not going to be for many people at all. But it was interesting. Let's just say that. So it was hard to get through, but it was interesting. But I forced myself to do it. Okay. The 5-second rule. I thought this was going to be shit, but it was actually really good. I highly recommend it. Honestly. It's this real, just approach to life, this philosophy of 5 seconds, doing things in 5 seconds, making decisions. You've heard of the 3-second rule. This is the 5-second rule. It's better. No, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting book. It's got the life philosophy expressed in this book is one that I agree with. And yeah, I can't really say much more than that. Okay, we're coming to the last book, which I'm going to have to put this on here, is my book, The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. I read this book 5 fucking times this year. Why? Because I released the book, I had to go through and edit it twice, had to read through all the edits, had to write the book, and then I had to record the audio version of the book and then listen to the audio version of the book after it's recorded. So I have gone through this book up and down. So I'm putting on the list. And you can, of course, get a copy of that book, and I highly recommend it. By the time you're watching this, I think the audio version should be out as well. So that's it. I might have missed 1 or 2 books if I read some paperback books that I didn't end up getting in there. Not as many books this year, like I said, mostly because of the Pimpsler course of learning Italian. This is a pretty long video, but I had a pretty good recall. I recalled a lot of the authors and stuff. So let me tell you about how I did this, and I promise you that I would tell you how I do this and how I read so many books every year. So the number one hack or secret to this is using something like Audible. You can sign up for Audible here. If you do, you should probably get my Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. It's 20 hours. But I listen to a lot of books. So I run somewhere between 20 to 40 miles a week. It depends. Now I'm probably running more 20. I was running 40. And I'm in the gym lifting probably 6 hours a week. And that whole time, I am listening to audiobooks. I'm either listening on 2x or 3x speed. If I'm in the gym lifting weights, I'm usually listening on 2x speed now, because I find that it's just with everything going on and the distractions, it's hard to listen at 3x. But if I'm running, and that's the only thing going on in my ears, I've been able to get myself up to 3x speed, and I have a pretty high retention, okay? Now, so let me say about that. So in order to do that, what you need to do is just you start with listening to audiobooks when you're driving your car, wherever, whenever you have the time, and you listen at 1x, and then you go to 1.5, and you incrementally increase that until you can get to the point where you can listen to 3x. And I can listen at 3x. Sometimes I wish it would go faster for a lot of books with no problem at all. Okay, and that's going to get you through material really quickly. An average audiobook might be 8 or 9 hours, and if you think about that, if you're listening at 3x, right, that might take you 2 or 3 hours to get through the book. So I can get through maybe 2 audiobooks a week. And then I'm also reading print books. I'm reading on my Kindle, or I'm reading just regular print books every night before I go to bed, maybe 15, 20 minutes. Okay, so by combining those 2 things, that makes sure that I get through a lot of books, right? And I also have a list of books all the time. So I use Goodreads. I've got a list of books that I want to read, that I really want to read. And so I always have it queued up, and I know what book to read next. So I don't have to go and find books. And I use recommendations from people. That's why I create this, because I want to give you actual good books, because how many millions of books out there, and I don't want to waste my time reading bad books. So when people recommend me books, I'm writing it down. I'm putting it in Goodreads. I'm prioritizing those books to some degree, and so I always have something good to read that has a high chance of being good. It's very, like you can tell from this review, there's very few books I said were shit, and there were some that were shit, but it's because I get recommendations. I don't just read books. Sometimes, like I said, I grab a book, but very rarely will I do that. Most of the time, it's from recommendations. Okay, so now let's talk about the retaining, right? So here's the thing. My philosophy with this kind of volume reading is not to focus so much on retaining. If there's a book that I read that's really good, and that's also what may have slowed me down. Some of the books I've reread, like I'll either reread immediately or I'll re-listen to the audio if it's really good. And my focus is not on trying to highlight things and pull things out and retain information. It's just on trying to focus on the book as much as possible. Because if I absorb myself into the book, I will get information from it. And sometimes it's not conscious, sometimes it's subconscious, but I'm programming my mind. And so that's kind of my thoughts with this. This is not the most efficient way to learn, okay, in general, if you're trying to actually learn something as far as practical knowledge, how to do something. But if you're trying to build up your mindset and change your subconscious mindset, just listening to books, just reading them, and focusing not on trying to extract out stuff, because it's a different kind of mindset, right? So it becomes analytical mind. You're actually sort of cutting off your subconscious. But if you focus on just absorbing the book, just getting into the book as much as possible, being as focused and paying attention to the information, then you get more out of it. I feel like, at least at the subconscious level, and it resurfaces. I don't even realize the stuff that I know about the book, right? So for example, even just knowing a lot of the authors of the book, right? I didn't purposely try to memorize any of those authors. They just came to my head because I wasn't trying, because I just had faith in my ability to recall that information. And a lot of times I find that that's the most effective thing. Again, if you're trying to learn something practical, that's not, I've got a program actually on 10 steps to learn anything quickly. It's a totally different approach than this. This is all about changing your environment and your mindset and, just absorbing information. So I just want to get through the information as much as possible and make that the environment that I'm bathing my mind in, and that's going to change my internal state, which is going to express itself externally. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not necessarily about, now, again, like I said, if there's a really, really good book where I want to absorb the information from, maybe if I'm listening to the audio version, what I'll do is I'll re-listen to the audio, or maybe I'll buy the print or Kindle version and then maybe go through and do it more carefully and pull out the stuff I want. But I find that I rarely have to do that because, one, not many books are so phenomenal that I want to do that, and two, I'm already getting a lot of the gold, the nuggets, like the stuff that's sticking with me. I'm not studying the book to study the book. I don't want to become an expert in the book, right? If I were trying to study the book because I was going to take a test on it, it would be a totally different approach. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the gist of it, the knowledge of it, the wisdom from it, which doesn't require you to remember all the facts and dates. It's not the analytical side of the mind. So I think a lot of people, when they study books, they're taking the wrong approach because they feel like they have to remember stuff like facts and certain points of the book. But it's more like, when I read the book, how does it impact me and change my way of thinking, or make me think about something in a different way that changes my philosophy, or changes my mindset, or builds something into my subconscious that gets expressed in my life, right? A lot of who I am today has to do with what I've read, and I haven't taken very many books and said, okay, I need to focus on these things in this book. Not that you never do that, but in general, I'd rather just go on to the next book and absorb more and more of that. So there you go. That's all I got for you today. I know this is a long video. Like I said, there'll be a blog post out there. If you haven't already check out my playlist on all the book reviews. If you want more in depth of any of these books, you can check them out here. And make sure you click the subscribe button, click the bell so you don't miss any videos. All right, I'll talk to you next time. Maybe next time I'll do this as a live stream for next year. All right, let's see how many books I can read in 2018. See ya.